Welcome to this episode of Holistic Healing with Lori podcast. And I'm a little off right now for a reason that you'll understand in just a little bit here. But I'm really excited about today's episode because we're going to talk about an amazing compound that is super effective for a ton of things and that you can actually make yourself. You can buy it already made. But the reason that I ended up running into this is because in the HEAL program, which I'm actually doing this podcast live with a couple of my HEAL students right now. And in that program, we have a whole segment on mold. And if you know anything about mold and how devastating it can be to the body, then you know how important this is, right? This is one of the main root causes that can cause chronic illness, that can cause all sorts of issues in the body. And there are a couple of different reasons for that. We won't go into a whole bunch of detail about it, but the basics are that mold actually eats the tissues. It disintegrates the tissues in your body. It especially loves your cell membranes. So it's literally breaking down the body. It also loves to live and colonize pretty much everywhere in the body, but especially the sinuses, because that's where you breathe it in, right? The mold spores. And so they colonize up in the sinuses, and that's super close to the brain. So, I was speaking with a young woman yesterday who has long COVID, and she was talking about the crazy psychological symptoms that she's been having and how scary they are. And she's afraid that she's going insane. And I know that some of you who are watching this have possibly experienced that. I definitely have experienced that. And mold can definitely cause that, right? Again, close to the brain because it also secretes toxins. Oh, and one more thing about mold before we start talking about this wonderful, amazing thing that we're going to talk about today. And that's that 25% of the population has a genetic mutation that means that the body's immune system is not able to create the proper antibodies to take care of mold in the body. And this is why two people can be living in the same house that has a mold problem, and one of them ends up getting super ill and the other one is fine. Now, even the other one, we don't want for them to be exposed to mold like that either. So this is the reason that I'm a little discombobulated today. We just found out end of day Tuesday, today's a week later, that we have a mold infestation. Now, I know, right? I'm actually really excited about it, weirdly, because it's something that, again, a lot of people in my program are dealing with, and a lot of you out there could possibly be dealing with or dealing with it. So it allows me to better be able to help other people out because I'm going through the experience myself. So that's really good. But what was so interesting about it is that my partner is like, his immune system is so strong. So, for example, I got COVID twice during the pandemic. He never showed symptoms. And I know he had it because he had a few little symptoms here and there. It just, things don't really affect him. He's not sensitive. He doesn't have a chronic illness or anything like that. But when they went downstairs under the house in the crawl space where the mold is, for the rest of the day, he was wrecked, wrecked. Now he's been living in the house, so his body's going to be more sensitized to mold exposure right now. But the fact that he was so wrecked lets us know how bad it is because he's in that 75% of people who do have the proper immune system response to mold. So he's fine now. But in the meantime, I got a test a couple of weeks ago called an ERMI, ERMI test. And it's a home mold test. You go around the house and you pick up a whole bunch of dust, which we actually had plenty of. And you send it into the company and they test for mold because mold likes to live on dust. And the minimum acceptable level, or the maximum, sorry, acceptable level is 2. And ours was 35 was the score. So we were like, oh boy. Okay, let's get this taken care of. So, one of the things that I recommend in the Heal course for people who are dealing with mold in the house until you can get it remediated, and that's a whole other subject that we're not even going to get into right now. But just so you know, in this year's Long COVID and ME/CFS Summit, one of the people that I'm interviewing is an expert in mold remediation. So, we're going to ask her all of the questions. So, actually, if you have any questions about mold remediation, please send them in to us and we can do that. But one of the things that we recommend that you do in the meantime is fog the house with a compound that's called hydrochlorous acid. Now, it sounds scary because when we think of acids, we think that it's going to be harmful in some way. Here's the thing. Hydrochlorous acid is a very weak acid that's actually naturally produced by the white blood cells of all mammals, humans, right? And it plays an important role in the immune system. It actually kills pathogens by using oxidation and chlorination. How crazy is that? Your body is actually killing pathogens by chlorinating them with this particular compound that's naturally occurring in the body. And then it's also super effective as a disinfectant and a sanitizer. And because it's naturally produced in our bodies, it's not toxic or hazardous. Now, let's talk about all the possible ways that we can use this hypochlorous acid. And then I'm going to tell you something that is just going to blow your mind. It blew my mind about how easy it is to access. Hypochlorous acid is safe for your skin, right? We actually also recommend it in the Heal course if you're having skin issues. You want to use 100 parts per million for your skin, but it doesn't cause irritation to the eyes or the skin. And even if you drank it, it wouldn't be harmful. Now, you don't want to drink it. That's not how we want to use it. But it's also super useful as a mouth rinse, as a dental rinse, right? Throw away your Listerine. Please don't ever use Listerine. And grab some hypochlorous acid. Again, you'll probably want to use 100 parts per million for that particular purpose, but it's wonderful for dental health. And actually there are tons of studies out there about how it's used for dental health, and it actually helps the body to heal anything that's happening in the body, as in the mouth, as well as killing off any microbes, bacteria, things like that are in the mouth, right? It's also really great for food sanitation, right? You can spray it on your food, on your food surfaces. It's used in healthcare already in tons of hospitals for wound cleansing, for eye drops, for patient room disinfection. And it replaces chemicals like bleach and ammonias and things like that. And so here's where my mind got blown, right? So I was looking for a 200 to 500 parts per million, which means that it's stronger, right? It's more concentrated than the 100 parts per million that we've been talking about. And I was looking for it on Amazon because you can just buy it already made off of Amazon. And I found a contraption that actually makes it $60 or something. And you know what it uses? It uses salt, vinegar, and water and this contraption, right? And it's so super simple. So when I make it now, and I make it specifically with distilled water because it lasts longer, And because, especially if you're going to be using it and breathing it in and things like that, we don't want the stuff that's in your tap water to be getting into your lungs. And so it makes like a little pitcher about this big in 12 minutes. And you can choose whether you make 100 parts per million or 200 parts per million. Now, before you go ahead and get one for yourself, which I really highly recommend, some of the other ways that we use it is, I think I mentioned already, for fogging. If you suspect that you have a mold problem in your house, or if you know you have a mold problem in your house. And this is another thing that it's an experiment that you can do for yourself. One of the things that I found that let me know that mold is still a problem in my body is that when we started fogging, and we're not using one of the expensive foggers that you have to buy for $200, $300. Let me show you our setup here if I can. Let's see if we can. Okay, so you see that fan right there? That's a humidifier. So we put the hydrochlorous acid that we made, that 200 parts per million, we put it in the humidifier, and then we start the fan and it just goes around the room. But within every time that we use that, within a couple of seconds even, my whole body just goes. I get brain fog. I start to get nauseous. All of these responses, which is a super yay actually for me to know that this is still something that needs to be taken care of. And it's not that the hypochlorous acid is a bad thing. It's that my body actually needs that right now to continue this process of taking care of the mold in my body. Now, we don't want to do it all at once. So I'm taking it in little doses. My partner, my honey, he's not affected by it at all. He's fine. He's bebopping around. And I'm like, why am I in this room right now? What did I come in here to do? And why can't I form sentences right now? And I did just run it. So that's another reason that my brain is a little off right now. But here's the thing, y'all. So people spend so much money on getting mold and mycotoxin lab work done, right? And so my thing is just spray some hypochlorous acid. You don't even have to fog it into the air. Just buy some off of Amazon, and I would say the higher parts per million, and spray it into the air and inhale a little bit of it, which is perfect. Like, it's not toxic for you or anything, and see what your response is. And if you have what's called a healing response, right? If you end up having symptoms exacerbated or new symptoms showing up, then you know that you have either a mold issue or it could be some other type of pathogen, right? So that's pretty cool. So let's talk about how hydrochlorous acid kills pathogens. So it's unique because the molecule of the hypochlorous acid is unique because it's neutrally charged. This is important because disinfectants and also binders, and I'll go off in a little segue about that in just a second here, but disinfectants and microbial pathogens interact with each other similar to magnets. So if you bring two negatively charged magnets together, they're going to repel each other. Bacteria and bleach are both negatively charged, and they behave to negatively charged magnets repelling each other. Hypochlorous acid is neutrally charged, and it's not repelled by bacteria. Now, there's more involved here. I'm super simplifying this, but basically what that means is that the hypochlorous acid can actually penetrate the cell walls of the bacteria and destroy them with this oxidation potential that it has. Just a couple of the pathogens that it helps to kill off the flu, norovirus, COVID, bacillus, salmonella, fungi, mold. And when we use it in these lower concentrations, even all the way up to 500 parts per million, there aren't any environmental concerns either, right? I don't know about y'all, but I have consistently had issues with cleaning products just around the house, like household cleaning products, right? Even the ones that are natural can be problematic. And this is an amazing cleaning agent. It kills on contact, like we've been talking about, pathogens. And again, as you're spraying it, you're actually supporting your body when you inhale it. So I am again just blown away by this chemical and how versatile it is. Now, I'll also tell you that if you do make it with just tap water, and it also depends on how you store it, it's only going to last for a couple of days, right? So it's like some other compounds that are oxygenating in that it wants to be a gas. So it's actually, so the active components of it off gas over time. So when you make it with distilled water and when you store it in an opaque, so not a clear container, but a container that is not see-through, then it's going to last. I think it can last up to a month if you do it that way. And they're not going to tell you that when, if you buy the little maker, the little HOCl maker online. So yeah, so that's a little hack there. So I would love to hear from y'all who are attending right now what your thoughts are. If you could let me know about that in the chat. And maybe if you have used hypochlorous acid already. And for everybody who's watching right now, we, of course, are going to include a link to that container. And again, you just make this with non-iodized salt, no additives to it as well. So you have to be careful about that because table salt oftentimes has non-caking agents in it. So you want just pure salt. Can't be pink sea salt either. It has to just be regular salt and white vinegar and distilled water. It's just still blowing my mind. Yeah, this is so cool. I'm so excited to try it. Yes. For this person who's in the heal course and who just added that to the chat, we're going to want to take it slowly because because you have had mold exposure. Yeah. And one other thing about mold exposure too is that if you're in that 25% where your body doesn't really handle it, and or you've had a really huge mold exposure, even if it was in the past, even if it was when you were like 3 years old or something, especially if you're in that 25%, it colonizes the body. So you may not have been exposed to mold since you were 3 years old, but you can still definitely have a huge mold problem because it colonized, like the Borg from Star Trek or something. Yes, I'm a total nerd. Okay, so I hope that's super helpful for y'all. I am super excited about it, and I'll let you know how all the mold remediation goes. We're having that done in a couple of weeks here. And hopefully it's gonna help myself and my partner because he was starting to develop symptoms and we couldn't figure out why. So again, even though he has that super strong immune system and his immune system can handle the mold and take care of it, it was just too much. It's like it's if you're in a boat and there's a hole in the bottom and you're frantically trying to get the water out of the boat with a bucket, but there's too much water coming in. So that's what was happening with him and certainly with my body. So yeah, let me know what you think about that in the chat. Subscribe, Share this with your friends. Oh my gosh, share this one all over the place because you don't have to buy horrible, all those horrible cleaning agents, and you can use this for so many things, right? All right, lots of love.